Hello, hello, hello. Welcome. It is Moscow Mitch Monday. We are your Mitch McConnell Retirement Committee. Thank you so much for joining our live stream tonight. We have got really a phenomenal evening for you. We've got a collaboration tonight with the Bluegrass Activist Alliance. So Julie Martinez is going to be a co-host with us, which is super exciting. We've got our Mitch in the News segment. With some fun news items where Mitch has been really showing his clear contempt for our Commonwealth and general humanity. We've got Kit back with a fiery essay looking at one of our civil rights icons. We've got two interviews for you tonight. Two interviews. First time we've done that. So Dan Wu with Atomic Ramen of Atomic Ramen fame and local activist and engagement. We got Sellus Wilder, who is a progressive politician. A lot of folks have heard of, talking about just the progressive landscape here in Kentucky and where it goes from here. And then I did want to make a quick note. So we have to say goodbye to Denise Gray, who has been a wonderful co-host with us throughout the past few months. She has gotten the official job with the Amy McGrath campaign, and so she can no longer work with our independent effort because she's official. And we are really excited to have her there, though, because I know that she's bringing a lot of energy and enthusiasm and great ideas to help get that campaign more. I don't know, what do we say tactfully? Put some more energy into it.
Get them on the right track.
Get them on the right track. Exactly. Thank you, Nate. Always way more, well-spoken than I and kinder than I. So I did want to start off with some introductions. So who are you? Where are you? What's your Moscow Mitch Monday sign today? And again, I'm Aaron Viles. I'm coming to you from Lexington, specifically the Childsburg neighborhood in Lexington. And my sign has got a little bit of a backstory. So it has been 24 days since the story broke that the White House failed to react to a Russian bounty on U.S. troops in Afghanistan. In those 24 days since that story broke, Mitch has yet to condemn the program or call for accountability from the White House. So my sign says today, our vets deserve better than 3 weeks of silence. Hashtag Moscow Mitch. Hashtag Russian bounty. And I'm pretty sure I could fit that all in a sign, right? So that's what my sign says. Nate, how about you?
Hey, folks, it's Nate Orshan, broadcasting from South Frankfort, here in lovely Franklin County. And tonight, I would need a very big sign, very, very big, because it would say, "Hey, Mitch, the American people should have a voice in the selection of their next Supreme Court justice." And I'll get into that a little bit more when I talk about the news.
Big sign. Yeah, you're going to need a lot of landscape for that sign, but an important one. All right, Julie.
Hi, Julie Martinez here with Bluegrass Activist Alliance. I am here in Lexington. I live on the south side of Lexington, and I'm really excited to be here with you all today. I think that my sign, I would go simple today with just a sit down, Mitch. I looked up the dates today and I realized Mitch McConnell has been a senator in this state since I was 10 years old. Now, I would like to say that was like 10 years ago, but that's not true. That was not 10 years ago because I'm 45. So, it's time. He needs to sit down. He needs to give somebody else a chance. And Kentuckians need somebody who actually represents Kentucky and not their own wallet.
Nice. That's great. So, hey, Julie, you're new to the show, first time appearance here. Tell us a little bit about yourself, about your what's your activist origin story? I don't know. What's your superpower? And tell us a little bit about the Bluegrass Activist Alliance if folks don't know who y'all are.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. That's the first time I've ever been accused of having an origin story. I love that. I'll go with that. So Bluegrass Activist Alliance is a grassroots group we started about 4 years ago after the 2016 election. We went through a couple different name changes and merges of smaller groups as we have gone along the way. We are one of the local indivisible groups here in Kentucky, and then we have been active at the local, in the city, regional, district, state level, and national level, trying to just get people engaged, get them involved in politics at all levels. We started off primarily doing protests and marches and that kind of thing because, in 2016 and 2017, I don't know about you all, but I was angry. I'm still angry about the state of the world, and just wanted to make a difference. Primarily, I'm a mom. I have teenagers, and I don't feel like the world is the way it ought to be for my kids, and it's not the way I want to leave it for them. So that's a lot of my motivation for the things that I do, is thinking about what kind of message do I want to tell my kids? What kind of things do I want them to see me living out, which is actually more important than what I say to them, right? Because our kids, they see what we act on. And my kids know that I go to protests. They go to protests with me. They know that we need to be active in interacting in politics. Sometimes they think I overdo it, of course, because I'm the mom, so I'm not cool. But ultimately, that's what we're here to is to make a better world for ourselves and for our children and for those who don't have a voice. And that's what's the most important to me.
That's so great. Cool. Well, yeah, thank you so much for joining, and we're excited to collaborate with Bluegrass Activist Alliance tonight. And then, moving forward, obviously we're all on the same team with an eye towards November 3rd and what we can do to ditch Moscow Mitch. All right, so Mitch in the news. We're now going to get some great stories about Mitch and what how he looms over the media landscape. And the first story comes to us from Nate.
Yes, well, I actually read about it in the Los Angeles Times, but close enough. So this weekend, we got the bad news that Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg was, quote, undergoing chemotherapy for a recurrence of cancer, this time on her liver, unquote. Well, given that so far she has survived 3 different types of cancers and treatments, this is really bad news. Although you could say that, she's licked them all, so why should this time be any different? But, for a person in their late 80s, it's not the best thing in the world, especially where this broadcast is concerned, given that Mitch McConnell is now on record as saying that he would consider a nomination from the Trump administration for a replacement. And of course, if we rewind the tape back 4 years ago when Justice Antonin Scalia passed away unexpectedly, Mitch did the opposite of that, right? He refused to hold Senate confirmation hearings for the Obama administration's nominee, Merrick Garland, right? And what did he say back then? He said, quote, the American people should have a voice in the selection of their next Supreme Court justice, unquote. Now you see where I wanted that on my sign tonight. That's what he said, I think the day after Antonin Scalia died. So he was ready. He was going to deny Obama that last nomination. Therefore, this vacancy should not be filled until we have a new president. Well, Kentucky voters know what's fair. And I think this kind of naked hypocrisy from our senior senator is the kind of unfair that we're just not going to bear. Justice Bader Ginsburg is in our hearts and prayers. But if she has to step down, it'll be time for Mitch McConnell to do the right thing and wait until the voters have spoken in November.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And prayers and bubble wrap to Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Obviously, we want to make sure that she is, safe and healthy moving forward. She's very vulnerable, the age group and, battling different health diseases, health issues. She puts her squarely in the coronavirus risk group, very much so, and also now she's had to go to a hospital, which can't, if you want to stay healthy, stay out of hospitals, right? I think it's if you think about Antonin Scalia, he died in February, I believe, is when he died. So the idea that, we don't have some case to be made if something tragic happens right now is outrageous, right? So we should be able to hold Mitch to the same standard. Of course, Mitch doesn't have a standard. His standard is how do I, make the most of this situation to advance my power. That's his standard, right? So it's going to be tough to try to eke out anything from that man. But look, let's hope this is just a theoretical exercise because, prayers for Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Absolutely. All right. So I think our next story is coming to us from Julie.
Well, I mentioned earlier that, my kids are an important part of why I'm an activist. I was taken aback by Mitch's quote this week, or I guess the end of last week, as he started talking about schools. First of all, I should start with saying, I don't ever believe Mitch when he starts talking, because he's not ever looking out for our best interest, right, as Kentuckians. It's the political pawn game, and I hate the idea of our children in schools being a pawn in the politics game. But what he said was, I think they fear more children being stuck at home. And this is his thought on what parents are thinking about students going back and parents wanting students to go back. Now, let me tell you, I have been quarantined with 2 teenagers since March. I have a 15-year-old and a 13-year-old. I know a little bit about what it's like to be stuck at home right now with kids. But you know what? The last thing that I have any desire to do is send my kids into any kind of circumstance that's not going to be safe for them. And secondary only to my children is my concern about my friends who are teachers, and the fact that I don't want to send them into a situation where they're not safe either. What we're doing with schooling should be the last issue that has anything to do with politics. It should be a bipartisan concern, right? Where are our kids? Where are they safe? Where are our teachers safe? Are our schools safe for the people in them? And this is just, to me, one more example of how Mitch McConnell takes something that should be about the well-being of Kentuckians, and he turns it into this political game that he likes to play, where he wants to come across, because we're now in an election zone, right, of I'm going to play the game of like, oh yeah, wear your masks and kids need to be back in school, because he thinks that's what people want to hear. That's not what being a leader is. Being a leader is making hard decisions, understanding what needs to be done, listening to the people that you're supposedly representing. And to me, this is one more example of failed leadership, where we're going to take our kids and we're going to make them into political pawns. It's not acceptable.
Yeah, that's the teacher element, I think, is really important, right? Like, because people have the sense like, oh, kids are immune, or kids never get sick, or they aren't spreading it, or which I don't know, what the information that's out there is not good. The situation is worse, though, that you would put them back in harm's way, especially with teachers who could, who'd very much be in harm's way. And, the question isn't like send them back to school or not. The question is rush them back into school unsafely, or give schools the resources, the information, and the expertise they need to design a way to come back safely. That's the question, right? So if
we can start by funding schools to begin with, right? So we already are dealing in a situation where schools are underfunded dramatically and have been for decades, right? We've been cutting and cutting and cutting. Now you come to a crisis moment. You can't support that crisis moment when you are already in a crisis because of a lack of funding, because we don't prioritize education and we don't prioritize our children, even though we want to talk about them like we do.
Yeah. But don't worry about it. Betsy DeVos has definitely got, our kids' best interest at heart, for sure. For sure. No one can question that, right? All right. So my story, or really quickly, we've got, so Mitch is on his tour, or, he's been around the state, reminding every county that he knows where they are, and that, it's not sure you haven't seen him for 6 years, but now he's back. He's bringing you a check, or he's reminding you about, the check that he got for you, right? So now it's him touring the state, talking about my CARES Act quote. So, and he's showing up at hospitals, pointing out how the resources they've gotten to help battle COVID and, remain afloat due to the kind of coronavirus response, which was very hard on hospitals. He's showing up at like food banks to talk about, all the great work he's done to help provide assistance for people, right? He's not showing up at big corporate headquarters to talk about how he gave them like no strings attached money. That would be the only legitimate thing that he should show up the Shake Shack, corporate headquarters and say, hey, sorry, you guys got caught and had to give the money back, but I really wanted you to have it, right? That's what Mitch did. Mitch showed up and said, we're going to jam through a bunch of money, $1 trillion slush fund for corporations. We're not going to have any accountability. We're not going to let, Democrats in the House see where the money went and what people did with it. And the Democrats in the House said, no. No, you need to actually give unemployment assistance to people. That's $600 a week piece, which is so critical for folks right now. We'll talk more about that later. The money for hospitals, the PPP program, which was actually supposed to be geared towards small businesses. We'll hear about how that worked out for folks. And of course, what do we got? We got, Mitch's in-laws $350 million or so to Mitch's in-laws, for their amazingly large shipping company, which, not quite a small business. The idea that he's now claiming credit at the same time saying, well, I don't think this unemployment insurance, the $600 a month or week thing, that should not continue. He's saying that point blank, that should not continue. He's saying, well, we'll figure out something to help people that need it, but it's a non-starter. We're not going to give the $600 a week moving forward. Of course, that ends July, 23rd-ish? Like it's ending very soon. They don't have a plan for the next program. People are relying on that if they've been able to make it through Kentucky's, horrible unemployment system, which we could go into detail on the unemployment system and why, it's horrible. Just to be clear, it's the Republicans' fault. We've done a little bit of digging on why it's so bad and why it is technologically not where it should be. And it is, in fact, Republicans' fault, but more on that later. But I do want to just say, this idea that he's just going to walk away or say, well, you know what, we'll figure out something. They don't have a lot of time, right? Everyone knows the date. It is July 20th. This thing runs out very soon. They're not, they go back in session and they're going to need to cut some deal. And we need to keep the pressure on them to make sure that deal includes the $600 a week for the people who need it. Because if that does, if that ends, our economy, actually, you think it's bad now, it will be horrible, and people are going to be thrown out of their apartments. People are going to be, struggling to find food. There's a lot of food insecurity in Kentucky right now. There's an incredible, unemployment, million people. Half of the state has had their income affected by the coronavirus economic impact. So this is actually from an op-ed. The Kentucky Center for Economic Policy had a great op-ed in the Herald Leader. And it said, state and local governments are facing massive revenue losses in the coming months that will lead to more layoffs, with the state facing potential cuts of 16 to 29%. That's in the state budget, a huge amount. And with the $600 in supplemental unemployment benefits ending on July 25th, with 50% of Kentuckians report having lost household employment income in the pandemic. So in less than 2 weeks, Kentuckians who are out of work will lose nearly 2/3 of their unemployment checks on average. We're not doing great to begin with. So the idea that that would happen under Mitch McConnell's watch, that's his leadership. If he does not do something promptly to give a next program. And I think that what he's been very clear about, though, his desire to make sure that corporations who force workers back in unsafe situations are legally protected. Right. That's his red line of what he needs out of his next coronavirus relief package. He doesn't care about the $600 a week. What he cares about is making sure that the greedy trial lawyers aren't able to hold irresponsible corporations accountable. So we need to put the pressure on Mitch right now, and that's the story that had me fired up today. Clearly, so that is Mitch in the news. I don't know, unless folks, Nate or Julie, thoughts about that CARES Act, the HEROES Act that's coming up next.
I think it's another real example of how Mitch McConnell likes to kind of trot out things when it's time for an election. And he has a long history of this in Kentucky, where he will say, oh, but look what I've done for Kentucky. Look, at these great things that I've been able to do. But if you dig a little deeper, right, if you just go a little bit beneath the surface, it never really plays out quite like that. And so I'm not surprised at all. I was expecting that, he would turn around and try to walk this out as, something that he's doing for Kentuckians. But again, Yaron, I think you did a great job of pointing out who really benefited the most from that. And the average Kentuckian who desperately needs unemployment are the people who are going to lose out ultimately, because they're not on his list. They're not the important person that he's thinking about. He's not thinking about who in Kentucky doesn't have food tonight or this weekend and can't feed their kids. He's thinking about, how do I get tax breaks for the wealthy? How do I protect the interests of those companies who ought to be sued for the way that they're acting? It's par for the course, in my opinion, of what we have seen for decades now.
Yeah, absolutely. Nate, did you have any thoughts? You're muted.
Nothing else to add. reclaiming your time.
Thank you, good sir from Frankfurt. All right, so this is now our call to action section. We want to make sure that, this is the digital demonstration, folks, right? So you've seen our signs, all very long, very large signs. Now it's time for what do we want, right? What do we want tonight for Moscow Mitch Monday? And we're actually going to focus on one of Mitch's minions. So specifically, we are targeting state level action today. There was an incredible opinion piece in the Courier Journal. The headline was Joe Girth, I think, wrote it, and whether or not Cameron wants to be Kentucky's most lethal serial killer. So Dan Cameron, the Attorney General, is a Mitch minion. Right, so he went to the University of Louisville, went there for undergrad, for law school, then became after law school Mitch's legal counsel in his Senate office for not very long, and then did some other stuff, but tried a case perhaps, like not a very accomplished attorney, but a very accomplished politico. He's definitely used his his law school expertise and connections to network very well, and is now very much revered by Mitch McConnell as the next generation of Kentucky Republican leadership, which if you think that sounds like a good idea, you've not been paying attention, right? So he has a long history of pushing back against Governor Beshear's efforts to keep our Commonwealth safe, right? So early on, when churches weren't allowed to gather in person, Cameron chose, first he got sued, and then he chose to actually, join with those bringing the lawsuit to sue the governor about, in-person gatherings, and they said it was all about churches and religious freedom, when of course the actual directive was to keep small groups small and not gather in large groups. So there was that, and then most recently is Evans Orchard's lawsuit with the ag commissioner Ryan Quarles. They brought a lawsuit against the governor, and Cameron is standing with them because people weren't able to go to the orchard in the number that the Evans folks wanted, and now he did a little revenue kind of venue shopping, and now there are efforts to strip all the governor's emergency actions. So masks in public, limiting occupancy inside certain businesses, allowing public K through 12 schools to have more than 10 days of non-traditional instruction for like remote learning. All of this stuff would go away if Cameron gets his way, right? So he's challenging all of the emergency actions that the governor has taken in the time of this pandemic. And thankfully, at this point, the Supreme Court has said, whoa, let's not do that. Like a judge in Boone County was ready to throw the whole thing out and kill people. Because that's what happens when these protections go away, is the infection rates go up, and then after that it's hospitalizations, and then it's actual deaths. So that's what happens. Thankfully, the Supreme Court said that this is a bad idea. Let's hold off. But it's not decided, right? The case actually has not been argued and decided yet. So at this point, Attorney General Dan Cameron needs to hear from the public. I saw some polls, like 73% of the public thinks the mask mandate is a good idea. He needs to hear from 73% of the public. People need to step up and say, look, it's important to keep people safe. So there is you can comment on his website. I think we're sharing it right now. But you can contact him, send him a message, let him know that you support the governor's efforts to keep our Commonwealth safe, and that he should drop his challenge to those efforts and work collaboratively instead of combatively in the courts. So that's our call to action for tonight. I'm going to wait here until you do it. All right, so you can do it later. That's fine. The link will be there after the show is over. But what we're really excited to do is have our first interview of the night. We are going to be joined tonight by Dan Wu. Again, Dan is somebody who I have eaten his food. So he runs Atomic Ramen, some of the best, I'm going to say the best ramen in Lexington, and amazing food. And then, of course, coronavirus hit, and Dan ended up in a situation where I think he just had more time on his hands, honestly. I don't know. So he's been very active. He's done a ton of stuff in the community. But I, read an opinion piece that he wrote that was really fantastic and talked about, the HEROES Act, which, the kind of House version of the coronavirus relief effort, the kind of next up for that. So that kind of led me to reach out and say, hey, what are you doing? You should come and talk to us on our show. So he's here, which is fantastic. Dan Wu, welcome to Moscow Mitch Monday.
Thanks. My pleasure to be here. I have a lot of thoughts.
You had a lot of time to think. And as we start every interview, Dan, I want to ask you, what does your protest sign say today?
Oh, I have so many things I want to say, but like today in particular, and the thing that I want to really drill it down on is the whole idea of the HEROES Act and extending that $600 extra unemployment. So it's hashtag save the 600. Simple as that. And, this is the kind of time where, Mitch is still in office and he's not gone. So we're going to all ask very firmly and very politely that this is something that needs to happen right now. I mean, the HEROES Act passed the House over 2 months ago, and it's been sitting on his desk rotting while, my employees are sitting there. I mean, the clock is ticking. The 25th is the last check going out with that extra 600. That includes all of my employees that I had to furlough and lay off, and that includes myself as a small business owner. So I'm not sure what I'm doing in 5 days, much less the rest of my employees and the rest of America.
Yeah, and it just sounds like the programs have been problematic. I imagine you were the folks of the Paycheck Protection Program was supposed to help. How did you find that interacting with that program?
It took me forever to figure out if I wanted to get the PPP loan, just because it was so complicated and onerous and there was no guidance from the SBA. And so it took me talking to every business owner I knew, a couple of financial consultants, and a couple of bankers to kind of cobble together. I mean, this is how bad things were. I remember, I think I had posted on Facebook maybe and said, hey, are there any PPP experts out there that can shed some light on this? And several people said, you are. And I was like, okay, we're in trouble now if I currently hold the most comprehensive information about PPP in my social circle. But that's kind of how it was. I eventually got it. And then I sat on it, and I have been sitting on it for months because I didn't have a good way to use it. The way it was structured, the percentages, you had to hit a certain number of full-time equivalents or else it didn't count. So the last thing I wanted as a small business owner was to come out of this whole pandemic in debt. That's the last thing I need on my plate. So I sat on it, figuring if I couldn't figure this out by the end of the year or whatever, I would just give it back. Thankfully, the PPPFA came through, which made a lot of really good and helpful changes. It changed the 8-week spending term to 24 weeks, which for me personally extends to the end of October. It changed the 75% payroll requirement to 60-40, which is also helpful. Right now, my fingers are crossed that there's been some chatter, including from Treasury Secretary Mnuchin, who is lobbying for all loans under $150,000 to be forgiven flat, no strings. That would be amazing, and that would unshackle all of us small business owners to be able to just spend that money on what we're spending it on. None of us small business owners are going out and buying Audis with this money. You know what I mean? Like, we're using this to pay our rent, to pay our utilities, to pay our taxes, to hire people back and try to stay in business. So fingers crossed on that one.
Yeah, that's great. And then there was a website that you had shared. Tell us a little bit about that action.
Yeah, so there's a fairly new organization called the Independent Restaurant Coalition. It was started literally, I think, 5-6 months ago in response to the pandemic. They are right now pushing through the restaurant stimulus, I'm forgetting the exact name of it now, but it's gotten sponsors. I'm not sure where in the process it is. What it is a specific restaurant and hospitality industry stimulus package, because our industry is the backbone of the American economy. We employ millions and millions of people. We include, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of small business owners. So it's a stimulus package that's supposed to help the restaurant industry get through it. And the website, I believe, is savetherestaurants.com or saverestaurants.com. There's a direct link in there where you can basically send kind of a push to your senators, and in our case, it's Rand Paul and Mitch McConnell to get this push through, because I think we all remember, like, months ago, there were industry-specific bailouts, including the airline industry. They were given a ton of money, and then they laid off a ton of people, and they make up a fraction of what the hospitality industry employs. So if they get their own special money, we need it even more to get through it, because once people are ready to go out and eat again, you're going to see a decimated landscape of restaurants and bars.
Yeah, just tragic. I am definitely keeping my fingers crossed for Atomic Ramen for sure, because it truly is the best ramen in Lexington. But yeah, Julie, do you have a question for Dan?
Yeah, and thanks for sharing that insight. That's really interesting just to hear from your perspective. I think all of us have our favorite small restaurants that we hope are going to make through it, yours being one of them. And I would love to see the leadership of our country really backing real business owners. I wish that we would see that regularly. I'm curious, with this time on your hands in the quarantine time, what have you been doing with yourself? How are you using your time?
I like to joke that my self-care is keeping busy. It's like the opposite of other people's self-care. I'm really not good at downtime. So I've been working on a couple of business models with some friends of just some sort of post-COVID or perpetual COVID era businesses related to food, but not very directly. We started a group recently called the People's Council, which is a grassroots, ground up, Black, Indigenous, and people of color led organization, basically to try to pool resources and do good work in a local setting. I think those of us on the left very often have a talking problem, in that we will sit down and talk and talk and talk and talk and make sure everybody's heard and get all these ideas out there, and nothing happens. And I'm really, really sick of it. So we're creating a grassroots kind of ground up organization that basically is about impactfulness. Like, if you have a project that will pay the electrical bill for 2 families and you need $600, we'll make that happen. And that's impactful, and that's going to help a couple of families. We're not going to try to create pie in the sky situations that are just unattainable and talk about it for 3 years and have, committee after subcommittee on it. We're just going to try to do stuff. So that's what I've been working on. On the business end, we're hopefully going back to UK's campus this fall, fingers crossed. I have no idea how that's going to work. It sounds nuts to me to serve food in a dining hall to hundreds of students a day. I don't know how that's going to work. We'll see.
Cool. And then,
and then I started a Facebook Live show a few months ago called Let's Get Through This. I just did episode 31 today, and I've had some really great guests from the community. We started off basically talking about life during COVID. So I've had a rabbi on, I've had community leaders on, business people, chefs, all kinds of people. And then recently I've kind of reshifted the focus towards Black Lives Matter and all the protest movements, and try to make it a real platform to highlight the voices of people of color in particular. I'm real excited. My next 2 shows, I've got Latasha Buckner, who is the Chief of Staff for Governor Beshear, and I got Frank X. Walker, former poet laureate of Kentucky. So it's like what we in the industry like to call big gets.
Big get.
Definitely, those are exciting. We'll have to check out your show. And I loved what you were saying about focusing on action. I think that's so important. We do, liberals, we love us some talk. We really do. We love to talk so much. I'm one of those. I love to talk. But that's, if we're going to make real change, we have to act, right? And sometimes we're afraid to act, I think, because we don't want to mess up. And I think we need to just act and accept the fact from the beginning that we're going to mess up. We're going to do something wrong in some manner. But in the end, isn't it still better that we did something and that we try and we learn from that and apologize when we screw up?
Yeah, I live by two mantras. One is don't let perfect be the enemy of the good. The other mantra is ask for forgiveness instead of permission. And the great thing with that idea is half the time you're under the radar so much that the powers that be don't notice you, and you don't even have to ask for forgiveness. You just get away with it.
Well, now we know to watch you on Facebook, though, and we're going to find out what you're up to, and we're going to keep an eye on you, and I'm going to hold you accountable. I hadn't seen you on the Facebook, so you're around here, too. It's good to see. Everyone's doing the Facebook Live, and sounds like Let's Get Through This is a great resource for folks who just want to find out what kind of great progressive activism is happening here in Lexington. So we'll definitely check it out and share it with our audience. Dan, thank you so much for joining us. We absolutely appreciate it. I would spend another 20 minutes just chatting with you, but we've got a lot of people queued up behind us, so we've got to move on. But yeah, any final thoughts you want to leave us with?
I'll do just one quick thought. The one big argument that the Republicans have trotted out against extending that $600 is that it would be a disincentive to people going back to work. What work? There's no work out there. There's not enough work out there between the very necessary state mandates that are restricting, for my industry, how many people can be in a restaurant. That's killing us. And put on top of that, consumer confidence and behavior has changed completely in the last 3 or 4 months to where people aren't going out to eat. So a restaurant like mine that normally had 12 employees, I might reopen it with me and 3 people and then realize that we can't make any money, and then 2 months later close again. That's what jobs looks like right now. So that argument is completely without any merit. So hopefully people will see that, and hopefully we keep the pressure up and get this money extended, because the clock is ticking.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Dan.
Thank you.
All right, so we are, wow, that was great. Super exciting. Now we're going to bring up our, our standing weekly segment. We've got Doug Price with Following Mitch's Money, which I think is going to be a great one because it's looking at something that Congressman Yarmouth brought up the other day, which was the fact that the background checks bill has stalled out and it's sitting on Mitch's desk. And I think that Doug asked, well, why is that? Why is background checks sitting on Mitch's desk? And I think he's going to answer that question for us right now.
I would certainly be in favor of allowing states to use the bankruptcy route.
I have my Porter Paints hat as I'm going to paint a picture about Mitch and money. Tonight I will connect the dots and weave a story about Mitch, money, intrigue, and the NRA. A couple years ago I watched a TV series titled The Americans. The central characters were Russian citizens brought to America to spy on America. Fast forward to 2016. Is this fiction the truth? In 2018, Maria Butina, a 30-year-old gun rights enthusiast, was the first Russian citizen convicted of a conspiracy to act as an unregistered foreign agent of Russia within the United States. She was released in October 2019 and deported to her hometown in Siberia. I understand it's really cold there. She burst onto the scene when she connected with the NRA and started working to help the NRA connect with gun rights in Russia. She got involved with an American lobbyist, Paul Erickson, who is now in jail for other matters. From an article by Anna Masoglia, the NRA disclosed spending on foreign fundraising for the first time in the gun rights group's history. While the NRA disclosed spending on foreign fundraising makes up only a small slice of the operation's total outlay, the actual amount of money brought in by that fundraising is unknown. The NRA is not allowed to use foreign funds to influence elections, but as a 501c4 nonprofit, it can continue to spend millions of dollars on political activity without revealing its funders, how much foreign money it takes in, or what the money was spent on. Prior to reporting $92,000 on foreign program expenses and $24,000 spending on foreign fundraising in 2018, The NRA's previously disclosed overseas activities were limited to offshore investments in Central America and the Caribbean, along with occasional trainings or events in that region or in Europe. Do we want American-based organizations and American politicians receiving funds from foreign governments and or potential pass-throughs from foreign governments to politicians? Do we want foreign governments messing in our elections? I think the 2016 election and the aftermath holds the answer to this. Here are some NRA campaign contribution figures from Open Secrets, the Center for Responsive Politics. In the 2020 election cycle, NRA had contributed over $264,000 to Republicans and a measly $2,600 to Democrats. Of those funds, $206,000 went to the NRA Victory Fund, $30,000 each to the National Republican Congressional and Senatorial Committees, $16,000 to the Republican National Committee, and $10,000 to Mitch. Most people will remember Jim Brady, who was President Reagan's press secretary until he was wounded during an assassination attempt of Reagan. The Brady organization continues work to pass universal background checks. Here's a Mitch-related nugget from the webpage. The NRA has contributed $1,267,139 to Mitch over his career. We heard from an earlier Moscow Mitch Monday contributor that a meeting with Mitch would cost at least $25,000. I would guess that $1.2 million buys more than $25,000. So what does Mitch think about guns? From a Washington Examiner op-ed by Charlie Spearing in 2014, does Mitch McConnell own a gun? Of course Mitch McConnell has shot a gun as a matter of principle. He's not interested in helping the left bully people into revealing what protection they may keep in their own homes. This was a comment by a McConnell campaign spokesman. After the Marshall County, Kentucky school shooting, where 2 people were killed in 2018, Mitch said, "I don't think at the federal level there's much that we can do other than appropriate funds." McConnell is not in favor of gun control laws. He just wants to throw money at the schools rather than addressing the real problem. He thinks school security is the most likely way that schools can stop shootings. You would think, given how much it takes to get on an American plane, or given how much it takes to get into courthouses, that this might be something that we could achieve. But I think we can't do that from Washington. I think basically it's a local decision. He added, "It's a darn shame that's where we are, but this epidemic is something that's got all of our attention." Does 1.2 million buy dedication to the NRA? Seems like there is another epidemic going on, and at least he finally stepped up and said masks are a good thing. But he continues to remain silent about the current administration's handling of the COVID-19 pandemic. On our Moscow Mitch Monday presentation last week, we heard from Congressman John Yarmouth. He said that the House had approved a universal background check measure, but Mitch has not brought the bill forward along with almost an additional 400 others. Congressman Yarmouth believes that Mitch doesn't really care whether or not the bill would pass. He only cares about protecting senators who would have to face constituents if the bill is considered.
Universal background checks on gun purchases. This is an issue that has 90% support in the country. 75% of NRA members support that, and we passed it, and Mitch is just sitting on it. And quite frankly, I don't think Mitch cares about the issue one way or another.
I've said repeatedly that the key to all this is people voting. Too many times, only 45% of the registered voters vote, which indicates that you only have to win 23% of the vote. This means that 77% of the registered voters did not vote to elect our leaders, our politicians. We need voter turnout in November. We need mail-in balloting in November. We must vote to retire Mitch on November 3rd, 2020.
this partisan impeachment will end today.
Thank you so much, Doug. Doug Price, always doing the research, always, digging in, doing the homework for us. We very much appreciate it. All the non-research inclined folks on the committee owe a debt of gratitude to Doug Price. But really excited this week to have Kit back with their semi-regular
bi-weekly.
What's that?
Bi-weekly.
That's the word, bi-weekly. Not or bi-monthly. I think it could be both. It's bi-weekly or bi-monthly.
Yeah, it can be both.
But yeah, so Kit with Mitch Never Lets Us Down in Letting Us Down. Kit, welcome back. Thank you so much. We're looking forward to what you've what's fired you up this week.
It is funny though, Aaron, something fires me up every single week. But this week I'm fired up, but it's really somber for me with the news of John Lewis's passing this past weekend. And so I just wanted to take a second and discuss that in my little mini essay, which is about John Lewis. So I'm just going to go right into it, no chatter, because my heart's a little broken. The Mitch McConnell Retirement Committee mourns the passing of Congressman John Lewis, a civil rights icon who fought on the front lines of the civil rights movement during the 1960s and later represented Georgia in Congress for 33 years. To quote House.gov, which is actually one of my favorite sites, up there with GovTrack, John Lewis was, quote, often called one of the most courageous persons the civil rights movement ever produced. He dedicated his life to protecting human rights, securing civil liberties, and building what he called the beloved community in America. His dedication to the highest ethical standards and moral principles won him the admiration of many of his colleagues on both sides of the aisle, something that I feel like we don't see nearly enough of, and some of my greatest heroes are actually able to do that in the U.S. Congress. One of my personal favorites, Senator Patrick Leahy, who can work on both sides of the aisle, with both sides of the aisle, said about John Lewis, he was a lodestar who drew us closer to our ideals. John Lewis was an American hero who taught us to stand up and to make what he called good trouble. As he said, when you see something that is not right, not fair, not just, say something, do something, get in trouble, good trouble, necessary trouble. And we are seeing folks carrying on his torch across our nation today, right now, and we have been for the past month, getting into good and necessary trouble, standing up against the injustices of the police and of our current administration and beyond. In doing so, they honor John Lewis's memory. We must also honor his memory and demand that our senators do the same. One immediate area in which we can do that is voting rights. As Kristen Clark wrote in USA Today, Mr. Lewis spent his life fighting for equal access to the vote, regardless of race, which he viewed as the most powerful nonviolent tool we have in a democracy, the vote. And we hear a lot about vote, and we here at Mitch McConnell Retirement Committee do some work with voting with our friend Sandy Downs. On December 6, 2019, Lewis held the gavel as the House of Representatives passed the Voting Rights Advancement Act, which would establish new criteria for determining how states with histories of voting discrimination could change their voting laws. He presided over the House vote to restore the Voting Rights Act 227 days ago, and he has now passed. Kentucky Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, my senior senator, has said that has had that legislation sitting on his desk since then. I imagine it's in his legislative graveyard, of which he is actually so proud. Mr. McConnell was one of the multitude from Washington posting tributes for John Lewis this past weekend. In his statement, he actually said, "Our great nation's history has only bent toward justice because great men like John Lewis took it upon themselves to help bend it." Really? That's true. I can't believe that I'm saying it, but he's right. I actually agree with Mitch McConnell tonight for that. But I say this to Mr. McConnell, that is a lovely and absolutely meaningless tribute. If you, like us, want to honor John Lewis, then you will take it up and pass the Voting Rights Advancement Act. Kristen Clark says it perfectly. McConnell himself has a historic opportunity to bend our history toward justice by taking action now to restore a powerful law that has provided some of the most critical voting rights protections in modern times. Mr. McConnell, we're doing our job to honor the man you claim to honor. I urge you to do the same. Otherwise, you're a hypocrite, and you know how I feel about that, and I can spell it now. Rest in peace, Mr. Lewis. Thank you for causing good trouble. Thank you for the lessons you imparted. I hope we do you proud as we fight on. Love, Kit.
Thanks so much, Kit. Yeah, John Lewis, that's a loss. That's a loss to all of us. You know, if you do progressive organizing, it's a loss to you, even if you never knew his story. But everyone should know his story because it is it's a phenomenal American story. I was fortunate enough that he actually had a kind of standing date where every year he would come and brief our canvas office in DC. So I got to see him come and, you know, tell his story about preaching to the chickens when he was a kid, practicing, and just an amazing human, you know. And to see all these Republicans line up and, you know, sing his praises on social media, you know, or Elijah Cummings, right? I think it was a couple of folks who got it wrong, and to block, you know, the legislation that he believed in. That it's astounding, really, to watch it all. Anyway, so thank you so much, Kit. We're excited to have you back. We'll see you in a couple of weeks. But yeah, we're now going to be joined by our final interview for the night. So Sellus Wilder is a progressive organizer, political figure here in Kentucky. He served as Frankfort City Commissioner for 2 terms, including 1 term as Frankfort's mayor pro tem. His film, The End of the Line, which follows the grassroots defeat of a multi-million-dollar fracking pipeline in Kentucky, has been used as an organizing tool in other successful pipeline fights around Kentucky and across the eastern U.S. Sellus served on the 2016 National Democratic Party Committee after running for the U.S. Senate that year. He helped draft and amend the most progressive party platform in history, which included a successful amendment opposing mountaintop removal mining. Sellus now lives in Lexington and works to support grassroots voter engagement and leadership development efforts across Kentucky as director of the Commonwealth Alliance Voter Engagement. So Sellus, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. And hey, what's your sign say?
Hey, Aaron. You know, I suppose today it would have a picture of McConnell on it, and say that the only way to take this Confederate statue down is to vote in November. Ditch Mitch 2020.
Nice. Yeah, let's do it. Let's get rid of that guy. So yeah, I was going to ask you if you supported our efforts to oppose Mitch McConnell, but it sounds like you do. So tell us what's the landscape look like from your eyes, right? So you are somebody who's engaged with a lot of different efforts. You've been in the political progressive part of Kentucky's politics for a while now. What's your read on it? How are we doing?
I mean, I think on the whole, the movement in Kentucky just showed a lot of strength in the primary. I know there was a lot of excitement around Booker's campaign and the surge that he saw there, and of course a lot of the grassroots groups around Kentucky, at least those that weighed in on the primary, for the most part, almost entirely, got in to endorse this young Black progressive state rep from Louisville. I mean, there were a handful of some chapters around the state of some groups that supported Mike Breuer, and even they did so on the basis of a progressive policy platform. So I think we saw that as people see that these ideas are viable and that there really are champions willing to carry these torches, that they will come out for that. And that was part of the that was part of the premise when I ran in 2016, as much as anything, was just to demonstrate that to the KDP and to the party and to others that we need to stop competing with Republicans to see who can be the most conservative and just lean into our values and build up our base. And since over the last few years, I've been working closely with a lot of grassroots groups around the state, and just seeing all of the energy and excitement around the last few months. I feel like the progressive movement really flexed its muscles. And I have no, and I believe we're going to continue to keep building and getting stronger from here. It's excited to see that Charles is staying in the fight with his Hood to the Holler effort. And that's right in alignment with what a lot of, the groups I'm talking about have been doing in the state. This belief that We need more representation. We need more voters that share our values. We need to ensure that everybody has access to the ballot, regardless of where they stand on anything. We need a broad representative democracy in order to have broad representative democracy. And then we need to focus our leadership development efforts on traditionally disenfranchised, underrepresented communities and spaces, which in Kentucky are not uncommon. And so I'm cautiously optimistic that we're building power. And I do believe that it is possible to beat McConnell in November, just given the climate that we're in. But that's going to take a lot of engagement and a lot of folks working and a lot of boots on the ground and a lot of phone calls and text messages, and digital engagement, and lit drops, and coordination.
Yeah, sounds like we've got a lot of work ahead of us. Really, is what it sounds like.
Yeah, I hope folks are up for it.
Yeah. Julie, you have a question for Sellus?
Yeah, Sellus, I loved what you were talking about, about Charles Booker's campaign. And one of the things that struck me the most about it, as the energy was really growing around it, was I loved the tagline that you just mentioned, the hood to the holler. And, he was an exciting candidate, and I hope to see him again and get to vote for him again. Because that hood to the holler, we have so many divisions in Kentucky, right? There's Louisville, there's Lexington, there's, Eastern Kentucky, Western Kentucky, and there's not been in my lifetime that I have lived primarily here in Kentucky, really people who could bring Kentuckians together. And that was what was striking to me about how exciting he was. And I hope that excitement will continue. From your perspective, because you have a really unique perspective on Kentucky and Kentucky politics, I think. How do we do more of that? Like, how do we actually bring those bridges, make those bridges to bring those areas together that are so often seems to be at odds with each other? And, I think the Republicans and some Democrats too have really made a career out of creating those divisions. And I think that as progressives, our job has to be to build the bridges, to bring those people back together, to make our job into building unity. How do you think we do that?
I think you put it really well. I think one point, and not to sound completely anti-establishment, because I can work with them as needed. But I think it is worth noting that a lot of politics, and both parties have been responsible for this to varying degrees, have just been rooted in transactional power and raising funds based on what you can do for folks, and then that informs your policy decisions, and then your policy decisions more and more reflect the values of the folks you're beholden to, and not the values of the folks you're supposed to represent, and that creates lots of gaps across our society. And this kind of pursuit of profits and power over the lives and health of everyday people is has been a pandemic for years. And I'm a little biased. I think I feel like the GOP's been more egregious in that regard, but the Democratic Party has had its troubles too. And so I think it's worth noting that the progressive movement is really rooted in values, is rooted in specific values, of like social justice, economic justice, environmental justice. And so it's so absolutely, and one of the problems we see in traditional politics a lot is this idea, and people come at this in good faith and with good intentions. I've seen it happen lots of times, where somebody gets into politics with stars in their eyes and the best of intentions, but they can't get the power they need to do the thing they want to do. So they recognize, I'm going to need to compromise my values, or I'm going to need to do this bad thing in order to get the power so that I can do the good things. And you just end up on this slippery slope where it becomes more about pursuing power and pursuing this position for yourself than it does about, like, why are you even doing that? Like, what is the point? Is it to be in a position of power, or is it to do good things for for your community? So anyway, I don't mean to get off on a tangent, but my point being that I think one thing that rooted Charles's campaign, it was it wasn't, I mean, he's a good speaker, he's a compelling candidate, but that wasn't the point. I think the point is that he was speaking to people's values in ways that both reflected those values and made them feel heard and seen and understood, and that overcame, what could be a lot of barriers between Black and white communities, urban and rural communities, because there's way more that connects us than divides us. And to your point, a lot of what is perceived as dividing us right now, a lot of the wedge issues and partisan issues that get thrown into things. I mean, whether or not the pandemic is real has become a partisan issue, and it really shouldn't be, but that stuff gets thrown out there, as this political distraction. And like, for example, a lot of what connects Eastern Kentucky and West Louisville, they share some of the highest rates of industrial pollution in the United States. They share some of the roughest economies in the United States, and they share some of the lowest life expectancies in the entire United States. And none of that's a coincidence. All those things are connected. And it's not really right versus left. It's more, folks who value power and profits, leveraging their power and profits within our political system to get more and more benefit for themselves at the expense of everybody else. So it's not a left-right thing. And I hate to, sound like a class warfare, militant, but a lot of the left-right partisan hackery, I think, just divides us from the real issues, it's more of a top-bottom thing. There are folks like McConnell and plenty others, just holding disproportionate power and using that in really unjust ways. And I think a lot of folks just felt heard and seen, by Charles's campaign, and he went to where they were and talked with folks, and that's always, you got to show up. You got to, really make that effort. I think he did.
Yeah, absolutely. I really liked the phrase you used, transactional politics. That really struck me when you said that, because that is what it is. When we talk about, and Mitch McConnell, being kind of the king of this, of using politics as this game, this pawns, of just playing with people's lives. It's so transactional, right? It makes it about the money, and that's what it's about. It's not about the people. It's not about people's lives. It's about money. And that just really struck me when you said it like that. That's a great way to put it.
I think I'd say that people power versus money power is also the story of the primary, where we saw, a candidate with a multi-million-dollar war chest versus a very scrappily funded campaign. And Charles was a phenomenal candidate, but to be clear too, one reason he was able to do so well is because his message and candidacy resonated with, so many folks who do this work on the ground and have been doing it for a really long time, that there was a real, swell of grassroots support, where, like I said, all of these, like the groups around the state that did come out, to endorse and support him, where you've got, Surge, setting up their first phone bank, for example, I think, to make calls for Charles's campaign, et cetera. There were, lots of groups scaling up their voter engagement activities where allowable, like 501c4s and political organizations, really stepping up to the plate in ways they hadn't before. And that's a synthesis that kind of needs to happen, where a lot of the grassroots groups that are trying to champion their values, whether or not it's, LGBTQ rights or Black Lives Matter or economic justice or environmental justice, they're, I don't know how to put it very articulately, but their values are what holds them together. And and this idea that everybody might have different missions and agendas, but they still need some measure of representation and political success. We need elected officials, and we need candidates, we need representatives who are going to pass policies that reflect our values. And we don't get to have those things. We don't get to have public leaders who share our values unless there's also enough voters in the universe, in the political universe, in this case, in the state of Kentucky, who share those values. And so we get candidates and campaigns, they pop up all the time. But there's lots of groups, on the ground, folks like y'all, have been in these trenches for a long time, working to engage the public in lots of things. And you've seen how campaigns like build up all this infrastructure and engagement infrastructure, and then they're just over once it's over. And so I think the long-term sustained grassroots efforts on the ground, in order for them to really keep doing their work of engaging more voters every year, they need candidates, win or lose. They need candidates in the races who can carry the torch for these values, so that they have something to rally around. So on one hand, like a candidate like Booker needs the support of all these grassroots groups in order to surge in the primary. And on the other hand, these grassroots groups need candidates like Charles to step into the ring and carry the torch for our values if they're even going to be able to activate voters, that share these values. We've got to have candidates carrying the torch. So it's a harmonious, mutually beneficial relationship. Progressive grassroots groups, progressive candidates can turn out, and I know this is a spoiler alert and a shocker, but they can turn out progressive voters when you actually get all those pieces together. And at higher scales than folks ever, thought possible, and they keep scaling up each time. So, I think we've got the pieces in place to keep building this long-term power. We're going to, continue to need folks engaging, not just candidates and campaigns, but the grassroots groups in their communities that speak to their issues, because there are ways to stay continuously involved. 365 days a year, every year, even if there's not an election cycle, there's always work to be done in this regard. And then, of course, we also need, as more and more candidates see what kind of support there is for this kind of campaign, because I'll make a prediction right now. Charles did so well in this primary and shocked people so much. We are going to now see even more candidates like him stepping up to the plate next time around. And this virtuous cycle, can just continue. So I have every reason to be optimistic about the path we're on, even though we are in pretty dark times these days.
And I think the key to that is what you were just saying, is we as progressives and those of us on the left, we have to come to the table together, right? We have to work together and support candidates, support each other, and not get into what we liberals like to do, which is tear each other apart a lot of the time, and instead focus on how do we mutually empower each other so that we can all get to the place that we're trying to get to.
Amen. And then the more we can do to lift up, organizations and efforts that really are led and driven by impacted communities, by the folks, that we're aiming to serve. That's just essential and vital. And that's also the difference between, you talk about the difference between, giving somebody a fish in a fishing pole. Like, it's one thing to go into a disenfranchised community, and try to engage folks and get them registered to vote and everything like that. That's well and fine. It's another thing to go into that community and identify the activists in that community and the folks who are doing the work and making sure that they have the tools and the funding and the position that that they need to actually make that difference in their community. That's how you really make the difference. Is like,
because they're already there. They're already there.
For sure.
It's not
they're all over the place.
Yeah. It's that we need to support them.
Yes.
That's great. Nate, do you have a question for Sellus?
One thing I'm always really interested in exploring when we talk about sort of progressive politics is the notion of raising revenue and taxation. And I wonder if you have any thoughts about, what it might take to get people to at least be willing to cough up more in taxes in order to get kind of the policy changes that we want. Or do you not see that that's necessary? What do you think?
Sometimes, obviously, sometimes that's necessary. I think for the most part right now, our tax system has gotten so far away, it's gotten so regressive that I think a lot of the more immediate needs, in terms of raising revenue, don't actually impact most everyday folks. Like taking away corporate tax loopholes, raising the taxable income on the upper brackets. There's lots that can be done that wouldn't actually put anybody terribly out of their way. That is certainly worth. I'd rather see the focus there than on debating whether or not we need to raise like everyday folks' taxes in order to pay for things. That said, I do think that folks who want to defend good government do need to be prepared to make that case. It's real easy for like taxes are so unpopular that it can be real easy for us to just treat it like a stigma or anathema and not actually just have the realistic discussions about what government is and can be and should be responsible for, and what isn't worth paying for. And of course, within that, I think there's plenty to debate about whether or not we're raising too much money for some things. We can talk about our military budget, I think it's actually absolutely ridiculous to talk about all the things we can't afford when the president's spending millions of dollars on his own golf trips. Like whole agencies are getting cut for lack of the funds that he's spending golfing. And never mind just all the bloated military budget. I mean, there's lots of ways to talk about revenue and equity within revenue without raising taxes on folks who are already pretty economically stressed. And that's just a delicate message, because I don't mean to imply that taxes are an inherently bad thing.
Right. There's always taxes. There's always money for tax cuts. There's always money for the military. And for this moment, there's money for the coronavirus response. But just watch. If Mitch remains in power, if he remains majority leader in the Senate, all of a sudden they're going to have to pay for all the coronavirus response, and they're going to be paying with cuts in Social Security, Medicaid, and Medicare. That's the only way they know how to pay for anything. It's his agenda. It'll be coming. So
I don't know that it's even so much I don't even know that it's so much a question of how do you pay for this stuff. Oh, we pay for it with cuts to Social Security and Medicare, so much as their goal is to cut Social Security and Medicare. Right. And so any chance you can get to cause budgetary harm elsewhere just gives you this beautiful excuse then to do what you actually wanted to do in the first place. So I think they're being a little more disingenuous than that.
Oh yeah, no. I mean, it's that this will be their opportunity, right? They have an agenda. They look for an opportunity to advance it, and you never let a good crisis go to waste, right? So that's what we'll be seeing. But
Mitch has already said the states can go bankrupt.
So. Right, exactly. Any final thoughts you want to leave us with?
Well, just to say that I think ballot access is a non-sexy and super important issue that folks need to be aware of. We just saw the highest voter turnout, and in a primary ever in Kentucky, and of course we had a big primary with exciting candidates, and we had lots of grassroots groups scaling up the work in ways they never had before, to register more voters to turn out the vote. But I think we also, for the most part, understand that that one reason turnout was so high is because we had to expand ballot access due to the pandemic. So we had early mail-in, early absentee voting, we had mail-in voting, which is really common in other parts of the country, but it really underscores just how regressive and limited Kentucky's ballot access is. We actually have some of the worst ballot access in the entire country. We take it for granted that it's okay that we only have this 12-hour window on one day in which we can go to vote, which privileges privilege, even though that can be hard for some folks to hear. And it makes it easier to disenfranchise some folks. And just the fact that we had to ease those restrictions a little bit because we're in a pandemic, both underscores just how poorly we've been doing as a state in supporting civic engagement up to this point, and how really poor our ballot access is. And it also, I think, really shows the path forward. If we want to make sure that all Kentuckians have a voice in their future, then we need to make sure that everybody has equal access to the ballot. And so I think it's going to be important to try to expand what we've had in the past. Not going back to the status quo even would not be great. We need to expand absentee voting, expand early voting, make it easier for people to vote. And that should not be a partisan issue. That should be something that everybody should celebrate and agree on, that our democracy, our representative republic works better when everybody has a voice in it.
Yeah, unfortunately, that is them's fighting words for our current Secretary of State. So let's
bring it on.
Good point. So Sellus, thank you so much for sharing your views with us, for coming on, having a chat about the progressive political landscape here in our great Commonwealth, and thanks for all the work you're doing to help make it better.
Thanks, y'all.
All right. So, hey, folks, we've got really exciting shows coming up the next couple of weeks. On the 27th, our next show is Bill Londrigan from the Kentucky AFL-CIO. So we know that Mitch is no fan of labor, and he's been at the root of a lot of efforts to weaken labor protections at the federal level. Bill is going to talk a bit about that and what we need to do to hold Mitch accountable for labor. And then August 3rd, I think we've got we're going to focus on coal and coal communities. A representative from the Kentuckians for the Commonwealth, a local member, is going to be on with us talking about whether Mitch is a friend of coal communities. He likes to say he's a friend of coal, but is he a friend of coal communities? We'll hear from them. So that's pretty much our show tonight. Julie and Nate, any final thoughts you want to share with folks?
Let's get some more sharing of that song that was debuted last week, Mitch Please. You can find links to it on our page.
Nate, are you doing a little self promotion there? It felt very awkward. It felt like maybe this is not your true strength. So his strength is writing great catchy songs and performing them and creating great videos. So I will take a moment so that Nate doesn't have to do it. But go watch Mitch Please. It's on YouTube. We've shared it a bunch. Share it yourselves if you like it. Right? Like I was saying, if you like the Beatles and hate Mitch, this is your jam. It is phenomenal. You're going to love it. You're going to have a very hard time getting it out of your head. But you've got, 3.5 months to get it out of your head as we're trying to get Mitch out of office. So let's do that. How about you, Julie?
Thank you all so much for having me tonight. It's been a real pleasure to be here and participate in this. And, I feel excited. This has been exciting to me. I feel energy and excitement about what we can do when we come together and we participate together. I always, I love to hear what's happening around our city and around our state. And I think, if we keep that energy and an excitement, if we can work together, that we have some really good days before us. And we need that because we need to make some differences. We need to make some real change happen in this election that's coming up.
Amen. Let's make some change happen in this election. So best way to do it, well, there's a lot of great ways to do it. I'm a little biased, but a great way to help us make change in this election. Make sure to like our page. Make sure to share our page. Ask to join the group if you want to get a little bit more engaged. We're using Facebook because we are in fact in a kind of COVID situation. We are thinking about some socially distanced protests outside of Mitch's office. So if you want to get engaged with that, hit us up on the Facebook page. We'll talk about it. We'll strategize for it. But yeah, really, really important that folks get engaged right now. A point that Sellus was making about the kind of your progressive values and speaking to your values as your political work. Mitch has got all right. So the coronavirus relief stuff that's happening right now is critical and it's important. And Mitch is a horrible human because 2 months ago, as you heard Dan talk about, the House passed the HEROES bill. They said, this is what we need to do for the next, tranche of support for the coronavirus efforts, relief efforts. And Mitch has done nothing to the very final moment. And why can he do that? Because he doesn't care about how people are affected. He can use that deadline against the House because we, Democratic politicians, Democratic people, care about how people are going to be affected. He doesn't care. Mitch doesn't care. He can walk it to the end of the deadline. He can walk it beyond the deadline. He does not care. And the corporations will get their legal liability protection. They're not going to get sued immediately. So he doesn't need that immediately. We know that people need the $600 a week immediately. So it is just one more example of his cynical, horrible take on politics that we need to get rid of. We need to rip it out root and branch and get rid of Mitch McConnell and his impact on our political system. And I appreciate you tuning into this live stream to help us have the tools to do that. I hope we're giving you some of the tools you need to take your activism out there into the universe and into into real life. Get off the internet and tell people about why Mitch and his policies hurt our state. But yeah, folks, thank you so much for being a part of the Mitch McConnell Retirement Committee. Oh, okay. And one other thing I didn't mention, please do think about making a contribution. So we've partnered with Indivisible. We are a local Indivisible affiliate. So that means we've got a great Act Blue account, Act Blue, which is really just, PayPal for politics. Use that portal, give us the money so we can put it to work, so we can spread the news, amplify our message, get stuff done to get rid of Mitch. Make a contribution right now. It doesn't have to be huge. Doesn't have to be an NRA style contribution to Mitch. Although if you want to, I don't think we've got a cap on how much of a contribution you want to make, but $5, $10, $50, it all adds up pretty well. And you can make it, weekly or monthly. We've only got a few months left to get this stuff done. So you might want to donate a couple times. All right. That's it. We're out. Thank you, folks.